The conference room gleamed like a fortress of wealth. Marble floors stretched beneath chandeliers that cost more than most people's homes. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline, towers of glass and steel piercing a gray November sky. Maya Reeves stepped through the double doors. 38 black, polished. Her ivory blazer cut sharp lines against her frame. Gold jewelry caught the light, subtle, expensive, earned. She carried a leather portfolio under one arm. Her heels clicked across the marble, each step deliberate. The room shifted. 12 bankers sat around an oval table. Most were white male 50-plus. Their conversations paused. Eyes tracked her movement. She felt the weight of their stares, assessing, questioning, doubting. She reached the table, smiled, professional, warm enough. "Good morning." Maya Reeves, Vanguard Solutions. A man at the head of the table didn't stand. Richard Hartley, 55. Silver hair, expensive suit, a face that had never been told no. He glanced at her folder, then at her face. His eyes lingered, not with interest, but with contempt. "I'm sorry," he said, leaning back. "Are you sure you're in the right place?" Silence dropped like a curtain. Another banker coughed. Someone shifted uncomfortably. Maya's smile didn't falter, but her grip on the portfolio tightened. She held his gaze. "I have an 11 o'clock appointment. Loan approval for expansion funding." Richard's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Right, of course." He gestured lazily to an empty chair. "Please, sit," she said. The room watched. Richard exchanged a glance with the man beside him. A smirk barely concealed. Maya opened her portfolio. Her hands were steady, but inside a familiar fire began to burn. This wasn't going to be easy. That morning had started differently. Maya stood in her penthouse office on the 42nd floor, overlooking the city she'd conquered. Vanguard Solutions occupied 3 floors of this building. Tech consulting, systems integration. Fortune 500 clients. Revenue, $200 million annually. She'd built it from nothing. No family money. No investors willing to take a chance on a 26-year-old black woman with an MBA and a dream. She'd bootstrapped, coded until 3 a.m., cold called clients who hung up when they heard her voice, pitched to investors who smiled politely and chose someone else. 10 years later, she was here. A CEO, a force. But success hadn't erased the microaggressions. It had only made them more refined. Her assistant, Priya, knocked softly. "Your meeting's in an hour. Traffic's light." Maya nodded. She straightened her blazer in the mirror. The loan approval today would fund a national expansion. Offices in 5 new cities, 300 new hires. The numbers were flawless. Her track record spoke for itself. But she knew better than to rely on numbers alone. She'd rehearsed every answer, every projection, and she'd rehearsed something else too. How to stay composed when they saw her skin before her resume. She thought of her mother. Janet Reeves, a janitor who worked 3 jobs so Maya could attend college, who told her every morning, "Never shrink yourself for their comfort." Maya picked up her portfolio. She was ready, or as ready as anyone could be walking into a room that hadn't been built for people like her. She left the office. The city sprawled beneath her, a landscape she'd fought to claim. Today she'd fight again. Maya connected her laptop to the projector. The presentation loaded. Clean slides, bold graphics, data visualized in crisp charts. She stood at the front of the room. 12 faces watched her. "Vanguard Solutions has grown 300% in the last 4 years," she began. Her voice was steady, confident. "We're seeking a $15 million loan to expand into Atlanta, Denver, Seattle, Austin, and Charlotte." She clicked to the next slide. Revenue projections, client testimonials, market analysis. The bankers nodded politely. Some took notes. Others stared at their phones. Richard Hartley leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. He hadn't looked at the screen once. Maya continued. "Our retention rate is 94%. We've secured contracts with—" "Ms. Reeves." Richard's voice cut through the room. She paused. He smiled, that same thin, condescending curve of his lips. This all sounds very ambitious, the word hung in the air. Ambitious, code for unrealistic. Code for overreaching. Maya met his eyes. Our numbers are conservative. Industry growth supports. I'm sure they do. He waved a hand dismissively. But tell me something. How did someone like you even get into this industry? The room went still. Someone like you. The words landed like a slap. Maya's jaw tightened. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but her face remained calm. A younger banker, Asian, shifted uncomfortably. Richard, I don't think... I'm just asking a question. Richard's smile widened. I mean, we usually work with more established clients. People with proven track. Records in traditional markets. Laughter. Rippled from two men at the far end of the table. Nervous, complicit. Maya's grip on the remote tightened until her knuckles ached. She took a breath. My track record speaks for itself. Vanguard has been profitable for 8 consecutive years. But of course. Richard nodded, still smiling. I'm sure you've worked very hard. It's just, well, lending is about trust. And trust is built over generations, wouldn't you say? Generations, another code word. Another way to say you don't belong here. Maya stood frozen at the front of the room. Half the table wouldn't meet her eyes. The other half watched Richard like he was delivering a punchline. She felt the weight of every closed door, every dismissive glance, every investor who'd chosen someone else. But she didn't break. She clicked to the next slide. Her voice didn't waver. Shall we continue? Richard shrugged. The room settled into an uneasy silence. But the damage was done. Everyone had chosen sides. Maya sat alone in the hallway outside the conference room. Marble bench. Cold against her legs. Her portfolio rested beside her, corners perfectly aligned. Her hands lay flat on her thighs, but they trembled. She breathed. In through her nose, out through her mouth, controlled, measured, but inside a storm raged. Someone like you. The words echoed. She'd heard variations her entire career. Polite skepticism, patronizing questions, smiles that never reached the eyes. But today felt different. Today it was public, deliberate, cruel. She thought of her mother. Janet scrubbing floors in office buildings while executives stepped over her. Janet, who'd saved every dollar so Maya could escape that life. Janet, who'd told her, they'll try to make you small. Don't let them. Maya closed her eyes. She saw the conference room. Richard's smirk. The complicit laughter. The bankers who looked away. She felt the weight of representation. Every black entrepreneur watching, waiting, hoping she'd succeed. And the crushing fear that she'd failed them. But then something shifted. A memory surfaced. Her mentor, Dr. Lorraine Hughes, 10 years ago. Keep receipts, Maya, always. Maya opened her eyes. Her hands steadied. She reached for her phone, scrolled through a folder she'd prepared weeks ago. Files, documents, evidence. She hadn't come here just for a loan. She'd come for something else. Something Richard Hartley didn't see coming. She stood, straightened her blazer. Her reflection stared back from a glass panel, exhausted, angry, but unbroken. She walked back toward the conference room. Her heels clicked with purpose. This wasn't over. 10 years ago. A cramped coffee shop in Cambridge. Maya sat across from 3 investors, her laptop open, her first pitch deck displayed. She was 28. Fresh MBA. No connections. Just brilliance and hunger. So you want to build a tech consulting firm. The lead investor, a white man in his 50s, sipped his espresso. What makes you think you can compete with established players? Maya had rehearsed this. I've identified a gap in systems integration for mid-sized firms. My projections, he smiled. Everyone has projections. What do you have that's real? She showed him contracts she'd secured. Testimonials, proof of concept. He nodded along, then closed her laptop. This is interesting. But maybe try something more realistic. Start smaller. Maybe consulting on the side? Maya left that meeting knowing she'd been dismissed, not because her idea was weak. Because she didn't fit their picture of success. She pitched 47 times. 47 rejections, some polite, others blunt. One investor told her, "I just don't see someone like you pulling this off," so she built it anyway. Maxed out credit cards, coded until her eyes burned, cold-called clients and perfected her pitch until they couldn't hang up. She landed her first contract, a small logistics firm. Then another. Then another. 5 years later, Vanguard Solutions was worth $50 million. Forbes profiled her. She keynoted conferences. She hired a team of 60. But wealth didn't erase the bias. It only changed its costume. Dr. Lorraine Hughes, her mentor, had warned her. Success won't stop the microaggressions. It'll just make them quieter. But louder microaggressions leave evidence. Collect it, Maya had listened. Every discriminatory email, every biased decision, every pattern. She'd kept receipts, not for revenge, for protection, for proof, and Richard Hartley had just given her a reason to use them. Maya stood in the women's restroom, staring at her reflection. Her makeup was still perfect, her blazer unwrinkled, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion. She splashed cold water on her wrists, breathed. Then she pulled out her tablet. She opened a folder labeled Hartley. Inside, months of research. She'd started digging the moment she learned Richard would oversee her loan approval. Loan approval rates by race. Richard's division, 87% approval for white applicants, 41% for black applicants, 29% for Latino applicants, even when credit scores and revenue were identical. She scrolled deeper. Email threads. Richard's name appeared repeatedly. One message to a colleague. Another one from the South Side, you know the type. High risk. The applicant's credit score had been 750. Excellent. Another email. Let's prioritize the Northbrook applications. More reliable clientele. Northbrook, 90% white. South Side, 70% black. Maya's pulse quickened. She'd seen these patterns before, but she'd never seen them this blatant, this documented, this prosecutable. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with something else, clarity, purpose. She knew what this could cost her. Credibility, business relationships, safety. Men like Richard didn't go down quietly. They had power, connections, lawyers, but she also knew what staying silent cost. Dignity, justice. The next entrepreneur who'd sit in that conference room and hear, "Someone like you." Maya closed the tablet. She stared at herself in the mirror. Her mother's words echoed, "Never shrink yourself for their comfort." She left the restroom. She walked back toward the conference room. Her face was calm. Her resolve was steel. She wasn't here to beg for a loan anymore. She was here to burn the house down. Maya re-entered the conference room. Richard was mid-laugh with the banker beside him, something about a golf game. Conversations paused as she approached. She didn't sit. She stood at the front near the projector. "Mr. Hartley," she said, her voice cut through the room. "I'd like to address your earlier comment." Richard waved a hand dismissively. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, Ms. Reeves, it's just business." "No hard feelings," Maya smiled. Sharp, controlled. "Actually, let's talk about your business." She connected her tablet to the projector. A new slide appeared. Bold title, Loan Approval Rates by Demographic, Hartley Division 2020-2024. Richard's smile faded. "What is this?" Maya didn't answer. The chart filled the screen. White applicants 87% approval, black applicants 41%, Latino applicants 29%, Asian applicants 63%. The numbers spoke for themselves. The room leaned in. A female banker whispered to her colleague. Another man frowned, squinting at the screen. Richard stood. "This is highly inappropriate. I don't know where you got this data, but public records," Maya said calmly. "Filed with the State Banking Commission. All legally obtained." Richard's face reddened. This is out of context. Loan approval depends on dozens of factors: credit scores, revenue, collateral. Exactly. Maya clicked to the next slide. A comparison chart. Same credit scores, same revenue brackets, same collateral. Different outcomes based on race. The disparity remained: silence, heavy, uncomfortable. Richard's jaw clenched. I think we're done here. We're not. Maya's voice didn't rise, but it carried weight. The room held its breath. For a moment she had the upper hand. For a moment truth stood naked in the light. Then Richard grabbed his briefcase. This meeting is over. We'll be in touch regarding your application. He walked toward the door. 2 other bankers stood to follow. Maya watched them leave. Her heart pounded. She'd struck a blow, but she wasn't sure if it was enough. Sit down, Mr. Hartley. Maya's voice cut through the room like a blade. Richard froze at the door. His hand hovered over the handle. Slowly he turned. Excuse me? Maya clicked to the next slide. An email thread. Richard's name at the top. The subject line, Re-Southside Applications. The room went silent. Maya began to read. Let's be strategic about these approvals. We don't need another wave of those people defaulting and dragging down our numbers. She paused. You know the type. Gasps rippled through the room. Richard's face drained of color. That's taken out of context, is it? Maya clicked again. Another email. Prioritize Northbrook and Lincoln Park. More reliable demographics. Another click. Tell Jameson to slow walk the Bronzeville applications. They'll give up eventually. A woman at the table stood abruptly, her chair scraping against marble. She stared at Richard, then walked out. Another banker followed. The room fractured. Richard's hand trembled on his briefcase. I don't know where you got these, but they're private communications. They're evidence. Maya's voice was steady, surgical. And I've already sent copies to the State Banking Commission and the Department of Justice, and several journalists. The words landed like grenades. Richard staggered back a step. His lawyer training kicked in: deny, deflect, delay. You have no idea what you've just done. You'll never get funding in this city again. I'll make sure. You'll make sure of what? Maya stepped forward. That I'm blacklisted. Isn't that what you've been doing to black entrepreneurs for years? Another banker stood and left. Then another. The table was emptying. Richard looked around, seeing his fortress crumble. His voice cracked. This isn't over. Maya locked eyes with him. You're right. It's just beginning. Richard turned and fled. The door slammed behind him. The remaining bankers stared at Maya, some with horror, others with something like awe. She gathered her tablet. Her hands shook, but her face remained composed. She'd just declared war on one of the most powerful men in Chicago banking. And there was no going back. Maya sat in her car in the parking garage. Engine off, silence. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. 23 missed calls, 41 text messages. She didn't look. Her hands gripped the steering wheel. They'd stopped shaking, but exhaustion had replaced adrenaline. The conference room felt like a lifetime ago. She'd exposed Richard Hartley. She'd burned bridges. And now she'd face consequences. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at the screen. Her CFO. Board wants an emergency meeting. They're panicking. Another message. A colleague. Maya, what the hell did you do? Hartley's people are already calling. Another. You just made a very powerful enemy. She leaned her head against the steering wheel. The cold leather pressed against her forehead. For a moment, doubt crept in. Had she made a mistake? Richard had connections, politicians, media, other banks. He could destroy her company, blacklist her clients, bury her in lawsuits. She thought of her employees, 300 people who depended on Vanguard, families, mortgages, dreams. Had she just sacrificed them for pride? Then her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Janet Reeves scrubbing floors at 3 a.m., telling young Maya, never shrink yourself for their comfort. Not for anyone. Maya lifted her head. She stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror, exhausted, angry but not broken. She'd kept receipts for a reason. She'd documented everything for a reason. Not for revenge. For justice. She picked up her phone, scrolled past the panicked messages, found one name, Dr. Lorraine Hughes. She typed, "I did it. I exposed him." 3 dots appeared immediately. "Then good, now finish it." Maya started the engine. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning, 3 days later. Maya sat in a downtown law office, sleek, modern. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the river. Across from her sat Janelle Torres, a civil rights attorney with a reputation for taking down institutional racism. Janelle reviewed the documents Maya had brought, emails, loan records, statistical analyses. Her expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened with each page. She set down the final document. "This is airtight," Janelle said. "Discriminatory lending patterns spanning 4 years. Email evidence of racial bias. Quantifiable disparities even when controlling for creditworthiness." Maya nodded. "Can we build a case?" "And we can build 10 cases." Janelle leaned forward. "But Maya, you need to understand this will get ugly. Hartley's bank has resources. They'll drag this out. They'll attack your credibility. They'll claim you fabricated evidence." "I didn't." "I know. But they'll say you did." Janelle's voice softened. "And even if you win, it'll cost you time, money, relationships. Are you prepared for that?" Maya thought of the conference room. Richard's smirk. The word "someone like you." She thought of every black entrepreneur rejected unfairly, every dream deferred, every door slammed shut. "I'm prepared," she said. Janelle smiled. "Good. Then let's burn it down." The strategy took shape quickly. Janelle had connections. Journalists, community organizers, other attorneys fighting similar cases. Within 48 hours, Maya had met with 3 other entrepreneurs who'd been denied loans by Richard's division. Their stories mirrored hers. Same patterns, same coded language, same injustice. A press conference was scheduled for the following week. Major outlets confirmed attendance. Janelle drafted a complaint to file with the Justice Department. Maya contacted the NAACP and the Urban League. She wasn't fighting alone anymore. Richard's bank scrambled. Their PR team issued a statement. "We take all allegations seriously and are conducting an internal review. Corporate speak for damage control." But it was too late. The truth was already spreading. And Maya held the matches. The auditorium was packed. 500 people, maybe more. Journalists lined the back wall. Cameras ready. Community leaders filled the front rows. Maya stood backstage listening to the hum of conversation. Her heart pounded. Janelle appeared beside her. "You ready?" Maya nodded. "Let's do this." She walked onto the stage. Applause erupted, loud, sustained, defiant. She reached the podium. The room quieted. She saw Richard Hartley in the 3rd row, flanked by 2 lawyers. "His face was stone," Maya began. "For years I believed success would be enough. That if I worked hard enough, built something valuable enough, excelled brilliantly enough, I'd be treated fairly." She paused. Let the words settle. "I was wrong." The room leaned in. She clicked to the first slide. Loan approval statistics. The numbers filled the screen, stark, undeniable. 87% for white applicants, 41% for black applicants. These numbers represent Richard Hartley's division at Lakefront Capital Bank. 4 years of data, thousands of applications. "A clear pattern of discrimination." Murmurs rippled through the audience. Richard's lawyer stood. "Objection. This isn't a courtroom," the moderator said firmly. "Please sit down," Maya continued. She showed the emails, projected them large so everyone could read. Those people, reliable demographics. Slow walk the Bronzeville applications, gasps, whispers. A black woman in the 4th row stood and began clapping. Others joined. Applause built like thunder. Richard sank lower in his seat. Maya waited for silence. "This isn't about me." I'll be fine. I have resources, connections, a voice. But what about the single mother in Inglewood who wanted to open a bakery? The veteran in Austin who needed capital for a landscaping business? The teacher in Bronzeville who dreamed of opening a bookstore? Her voice rose. They didn't have platforms. They didn't have lawyers. They just had dreams. And Richard Hartley crushed those dreams because of the color of their skin. A journalist raised her hand. Mr. Hartley, would you like to respond? Richard stood slowly. His face was pale. These allegations they're being taken out of context. Banking decisions are complex. There are multiple factors. Then explain this. Maya clicked to another slide. A comparison chart. 2 loan applications side by side. Identical credit scores. Identical revenue. Identical collateral. 1 applicant white approved. 1 applicant black denied. Both from Richard's division. Silence, heavy, damning. Richard's mouth opened, closed. His lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. He sat down. Maya's voice softened. I'm here because silence protects systems like this. Silence lets men like Richard Hartley operate unchecked. And I refuse to be silent. The room erupted. Applause, cheers, tears. People stood. The journalists swarmed forward. Richard and his lawyers fled through a side exit. Maya stood at the podium, tears streaming down her face. But she was smiling. The truth had won 2 months later. Maya stood in her office watching snow fall over Chicago. The city glittered beneath a blanket of white. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen. Breaking news, Richard Hartley resigns from Lakefront Capital Bank. She read the article. The bank's board had forced him out. An internal investigation confirmed systemic discrimination in his division. Federal regulators had launched a formal inquiry. The bank agreed to reform its lending practices and establish an oversight committee. Maya set down her phone. Justice felt strange, quieter than she'd imagined. Not triumphant. Just necessary. Her company had survived. The board had initially panicked, but public support rallied. Clients stayed. New clients appeared, people who admired her courage. Vanguard secured funding from a coalition of ethical investors. The expansion moved forward, but Maya had changed the mission. She established a fund to support black and brown entrepreneurs denied access to traditional capital. She partnered with community organizations. She hired a team dedicated to mentorship and advocacy. She walked to her desk, picked up a framed photo. Her mother, Janet, in her janitor's uniform, smiling outside the building she'd cleaned for 20 years. Maya whispered, "We did it, Mama." Her assistant knocked. "Maya, there's a woman on the phone. Says she was denied a loan because of her zip code." "She needs help?" Maya smiled. "Put her through." The work wasn't finished. It would never be finished. But she wasn't fighting alone anymore. And that made all the difference. 6 months later, Maya stood before a room of young entrepreneurs, mostly black and brown faces, mostly dreamers who'd been told they didn't belong. She looked at them and saw herself 10 years ago. "They will underestimate you," she said. "They will question your credentials. They will ask how someone like you got here." She paused. Let the words land. "But here's what I need you to understand. Your presence is not a favor. It's not a diversity quota. It's a right. You belong at every table, in every boardroom, at the head of every company." A young woman in the front row wiped tears from her eyes. Maya smiled at her. "And when they try to shrink you, when they use coded language and polite discrimination, remember this: silence protects them. Your voice protects you." She thought of the conference room. Richard's smirk. The humiliation, the fear, and then the power of speaking truth to power, of refusing to disappear. "Never let them silence your truth," Maya said, "because your truth might be the key that unlocks the door for someone else." The room stood. Applause thundered. Maya descended from the stage, shaking hands, hugging strangers who felt like family. She walked outside into brilliant sunshine. The city sprawled before her, No longer a fortress to conquer, but a landscape she'd helped reshape. She thought of her mother, of every closed door, of every person who'd bet against her, and she smiled, head high, shoulders back. A CEO, a warrior, a woman who refused to be erased. The fight continued, but so did the hope.